How's it going, everybody? You doing good? Having a good afternoon, morning, night, whatever time it is when you're watching this? I hope so. Okay, it is definitely fall for us here, and we're pushing to get all of our last medicines in, and then like that on top of like a lot of like fall medicine, like roots and such, aren't ready until just now to harvest. So we've got like to double down on like getting all the last stuff from the garden, all the last stuff that's on the land that's, you know, that was ready for like in summer, and then we start working our way through like all the things that are ready for us this fall. But right now I'm focusing on clearing out the herbal allies from my meager garden, and the last one I harvested is Horehound. And I love these tubs. I reuse them over and over and over and again for so many different things, but they're just fantastic for gathering herbs, especially because, you know, I only use fresh plant matter, but sometimes, you know, after like 8 hours of harvesting a garden, you don't have the energy to then come in and like get it all ready. So what's really cool with these that have lids is that you can either pop them in your fridge if you have room. I never have room in my fridge. Or you can sit them somewhere cool, and then I usually take a damp towel. You can use paper towel, whatever, and I get it just barely wet, and then I sit it in here, and that allows the plant to have moisture so it doesn't really wilt on you. So you can still be working with fresh plant matter a day or so after you harvest. Now, if you keep it in the fridge, you've probably got like up to like 3 days. But of course, the sooner the better. I just harvested this yesterday. So I'm going to make a Horehound infused honey. You probably have had an encounter with Horehound and don't even realize it. There are, and I probably can't say the name of the cough drop, but they start with an R. A person plays, you know, one of those really long alpine horns over, you know, the alpine mountains, and it goes cough drop. Those big brown things, those taste like Horehound because the primary ingredient in them are Horehound, and that's because she is amazing at helping to soothe sore throats, repress the urge to cough, and then when she's in honey form, a little bit more potent than a cough drop form, she can be a natural expectorant, meaning she can get into our lungs and help thin out and break out and bring up that crap that's making us cough in the first place. Or she can just calm down a dry cough, because again, she's got some pretty cool anti-spasmatic. And anti-spasmatic means like, you ever like, you feel that twitch in your throat, but there's nothing there, like you're kind of like, or your eye twitches or something. That's where you just randomly, your muscles are twitching, and your like nerve endings and things like that. And she can go in there and stop that from happening. So that's how she kind of like calms down the urge to cough. But she's also great in honey form or even in tincture form because Horehound is a mint. So this lady has the amazing ability to not only calm our cough down and soothe our sore throat, but she can also help us with that upset stomach we might have, because, you know, we've been swallowing all that crap that we can't cough up, and you kind of, you know, get a sour stomach from that. She can help with colds and flus and fevers, and a small amount of pain relief too. Most mints have the ability to, you know, help with sore muscles and things like that. She's doesn't have the strongest mint smell, but she is definitely a mint. Now, there are wild varieties, and I know that I normally do videos of like meeting these plants in the wild or even in my garden, but you know, we were just so pressed. But Horehound's generally something that you're going to grow in your garden. Like I said, we do have wild varieties here. We have water Horehound that grows here, and I do harvest her, but very sparingly, because personally for here, she doesn't really explode with abundance, you know, and so I usually just make a tiny jar for myself. But that's just because sometimes I feel like she's a bit more potent because she's wild, but I also feel like the garden Horehound is more realistic for making things that are kind of extravagant use, such as infused honeys. So basically all I'm going to do is take a pair of scissors, decide which one I want, and I'm just gonna fill my jar up about a little less than halfway, maybe halfway. Usually I do this on a cutting board, but I'm not even gonna lie, I haven't gotten around to cleaning my kitchen today, and my cutting board isn't clean. So this will have to do, but we're just gonna give her a little bit more surface space to extract to. You could probably actually do a little bit more than half of your jar, because Horehound, I wouldn't call her an overly moist herb. Like, she's not dry, but like, I wouldn't call her juicy, meaning she's not going to put a ton of water content into your honey. And that means that she's not going to ferment as potently. And this is going to ferment. Now, you can watch videos where I've added vodka to prevent fermenting. And at this point, with this particular plant, it's potato, meaning however you want to do it. What's really cool is with the fermenting, you get a little bit of the alcohol soluble properties, but you also get that if you add vodka to prevent the fermenting. But I like the fermenting in this instance, because I feel like if you're already that sick, it's not going to hurt you to have a little bit of beneficial bacteria in your body, you know, especially because when we get all that gunk in our stomach, it tends to thin it out, and just, you know, your whole body's under attack. But as soon as I'm done with this part, I'll talk you through what to do after you've fermented it. Now, I don't want you to think this is like fermented like you're making wine or beer. The alcohol content in it is like extremely negligible. I feel safe giving this to kids who are, you know, over the age of 4 or so. And I just say that because it's with Horehound. So, you know, it's not a huge deal, and you're definitely smart enough to do this. And again, we're just cutting her up because it shows, well, I guess I'm showing you how to do it. It allows the honey to extract a little bit more, like more surface area. Shit, I'd say I'm tired, but I'm actually feeling pretty good today. I guess I'm just tripping over words. You know, being human and all. And so, yeah, again, you're just putting some chopped up Horehound into the jar. I want you to resist the urge to throw this into like a food processor. I know you'll see a lot of herbalists like completely pulp their stuff before they do anything, and you don't need to do that. This plant and that honey knows what it's doing. You don't need to like abuse the plant to the point that it's like unrecognizable. Plus, you'll have a really hard time getting it to strain cleanly, meaning at the end we're probably going to, you'd probably use this honey, take a spoonful straight, or you'd put some in some hot water for like an instant cup of tea, and you don't want like all those little bits going in and making you cough more. You know, you don't want gunk at the bottom of your cup. So basically, the next step is to pour honey over the top of your Horehound. And again, what I'm doing here can basically apply to almost any fresh herbal ally you're using. I mean, you could use dry, but it kind of defeats the purpose. Honey is not strong enough to extract medicinal properties really from dried plant matter, but fresh plant matter is a different story. I mean, you could make yourself a flavored honey. I mean, that's delicious. You can do garlic honeys and things like that with dried. But you can also do garlic honey fresh and ferment it and have some pretty potent medicine and stuff to cook with. So, this time I remembered to bring my poker mabob thing. It's actually an icing spreader, but these come in really handy when you're filling a lot of jars and stuff. You see, it's going to take a second for that honey to get down there. So I'm going to help it. That way I can add more honey and just, you know, have an excuse when I'm done and you're not watching to just lick this entire thing. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. I don't need that much sugar. And so I'm just going to kind of work it around like I'm churning butter. And that might not look like there's a whole lot in there, but I guarantee you there's enough to start the fermentation process. I might add a little bit more though. My mind's like, you're right, there's not a whole lot in there. Put more in there. We might as well just make her a strong batch, just because I don't really have enough left over here to do much otherwise, so why not? That's how my brain works. It's like, no. That was was kind of cool. It looked like I knew what I was doing. It pushed down. It pushed down real well into there. So I'm just going to put this in. I'm adding it in unchopped. No big deal. Okay, let's see if the second time will look as cool. Ta-da! Okay, so I'm working this down in there. And if you're like me in the last 3 videos I made and you forgot to bring a thing to make it work down in, you can wait an hour or so and the honey will slowly work its way through the plant matter. Okay. That did not end up as messy as I figured it would be. Look, I even got enough honey off of there I could probably justifiably lick that. So now I'm just going to top it off. Now, I'm actually going to be encouraging fermenting with this. You don't need to add any yeast or anything like that. The thing is that this Horehound, the liquid that's naturally occurring in her, is going to be released into the honey. And this is raw honey. You don't have to use raw honey, but you know, it's good if you can. So the liquid from the Horehound is going to be released into the honey, and that's going to make the honey's water content above 25%. And when honey has more than 25% water content, it begins to ferment, especially with raw, because it's got all those natural yeast occurring in it. And then on your unwashed plant matter, like the Horehound here, also has natural occurring yeast. And so, but I'm not talking, it's not going to bubble like you're like really brewing something or fermenting food if you've ever done that. What you're going to do throughout the next about 6 weeks, you're going to let this sit. 3 to 6 weeks, you can go up to 8 weeks. I usually stop at 6. Is you're going to feel that, hear that? If you can still click that, she's not fermenting. If you try to click it and you can't push down, what it's time to do is crack the lid and let the gas from the fermentation process off. Now you can get one of those fermenting caps. They're specific for fermenting food, and then you don't have to worry about it. But do be mindful. Put like a note somewhere that you need to check it. Now, if you forget to let the gas off, it's not going to explode on you. This honey is pretty thick, but what it could do is like bust out the bottom of your jar, and that would suck. No matter if you're using a little jar or a big jar, spilled honey is never fun. Or it can just crack it on the side. And now a lot of people make the mistake of, just licking honey off myself, of making these fermented honeys and then not halting the fermentation process. Like I've seen people, like you'll make this, and it's an honest mistake, it's an honest mistake. You'll make this, you'll think it's done fermenting, you'll put it into another bottle, you'll share some with a friend, a family member, maybe even sell some, and then in the mail or in that person's cupboard or whatever, the bottle, again, it won't really explode, it'll just break and make a mess. It's not going to explode like if you were making like kombucha or kefir or something like that, because it's not going to be fermenting that vigorously. But it's so easy to prevent that from happening. So the next step you would take after it was done infusing and after you strain it, and a tip to strain it easy is put it in the oven on the lowest setting for, you know, 20-30 minutes, even an hour or whatever, and get the honey real warm, because then it'll run through like a metal sieve or some cheesecloth, although I recommend anything not cloth because it will be hard to clean off. It'll run through it just as easy as water will. And then you're going to take that honey and you can put it into a double boiler. You can make a double boiler if you don't have one by taking, you know, a pot of water and then a metal bowl that fits inside the pot and makes a seal. And then put your honey in the empty bowl on top, and then start heating the water up underneath of it. And that will bring the temperature of your honey up without scorching it. It's pretty common in like candy or chocolate making or anything like that. Or if you don't want to do that, if you feel intimidated by that, you can take your jar of honey after it's been strained. You can sit it inside of your favorite spaghetti pot, a pot that's deep enough that the water can get to about here on whatever jar you're using, a little jar or whatever. And then you're going to slowly start warming it up, and you're going to bring it up to about 170 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. You're like, how do I know how warm it is? Well, You can go buy yourself a real cheap meat thermometer, candy thermometer. They're handy to have around. Anyways, I like the digital ones. I got one at Walmart forever ago for like $5. It beeps when it gets to a temperature that I set it at, and I just put the thermometer probe in here, and then it tells me. And what that's going to do is it's going to kill off the yeast. And what a lot of people don't know is that's how wine is made for the most part, to stop fermenting. They bring it up to a temp high enough to kill off the yeast, and then it will stop fermenting. Or they use chemical tablets, but you know, I wouldn't do that with honey, and I don't suggest it with wine. I'd rather have my wine heated a little bit. So it's really that easy, and now you might, when you're doing that, get a little foam on the top of it, and that's just the water content being cooked out. So scoop that foam off. Don't mix it back in. I mean, it won't kill you if it does, but you'll end up with a more potent honey if you, it'll get down to like a honey state. It won't be like thin water anymore. Or if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to heat it, you need to be keeping it in the fridge, because cold temperatures will also halt, or at least very, like for the most part, slow down fermentation. But eventually it'll go boozy on you, you know, and that won't kill you. The alcohol will keep it shelf stable. And there's some people worry about botulism when it comes to honey, but the thing about botulism is it can't thrive in like high sugar environments, which is why when you make like jam and jellies and stuff, you don't have to use a pressure cooker. You can just use a water bath. So don't freak out about botulism. There's too much sugar in here for it to exist. So that's how you make a Horehound honey. If I missed something, because it's entirely possible, if I forgot to say, oh, I almost forgot to say, now we're going to label it. I think I forgot that in one of the other videos I made too. I was like, shit. So I put a label on it, so you know when you began it. And that's important, because then you can keep track of when it's ready. I'm going to mark on here honey. I'm going to put on here that it's Horehound. And then raw honey. And then where I got it from. But, you know, my labels are pretty complicated because I have to like keep track of all sorts of information, but yours don't have to be. If you're just making this stuff for yourself, you can just put on there on a piece of masking tape or a piece of duct tape or something that you can stick to the side. I really don't like to write on the lid. It's best to stick something to the side and just write on there what it is and where you got it from and what the date is. That way you're like, okay, look, it's been 6 weeks since I've put that there. I better get it strained out. You know, or 3 weeks, or whenever you really want to do it. But I really don't like to let it go much past the 6 week mark. Because, I mean, eventually the plant matter can go bad on you, even though, like, oh, geez, almost, well, I guess it's a double thing there. Even the plant matter can go bad on you. It doesn't happen very often, but it's just better safe than sorry. And so I'm going to stick that on there, my split level label there. And now I know who she is, what's in her, and when I started her. And then I like to sit my honeys in a warm place. I personally love and hoard seed heating mats. Those are the things you buy to start seeds at home for like your garden, you know. I love them because they're plastic, because sometimes these bottles weep. You know, they leak out, and you can just wipe it off easy. You can scrub it down with soap and water. And then it gives a steady ambient temperature underneath of it of about 72 degrees. So you're not like cooking it, but you're just helping your bottle stay warm. I use that to infuse my oils. I use dried plant matter in and things like that. And that's going to really encourage this honey to ferment and to thin out and extract the medicinal properties from the Horehound. But you don't have to buy that. You could probably use the top of your fridge. Odds are good if you put your hand up there, it's feeling pretty warm to the touch. Some people can use their water heater if you have the tank, you know, because the top of that will be pretty warm. It's getting to be wintertime. Do not sit it on your wood stove, but you can sit it near your wood stove. One time, forever ago, I was making an electuary, which isn't quite the same thing. That's where you, I guess I ought to show you how to make those. That's where you like put powdered herbs into honey. And then you have like an instant tea type thing. But anyhow, I had a jar about this size, and electuaries definitely need heat to help, because again, we're trying to make it to where it's actually going to pull out the medicinal properties of it. But with electuaries, you're actually eating the plant matter. But anyhow, I sat it on top of like this little rack that I always use on top of my wood stove. It's like a metal rack and it keeps things like off of the hot surface. But I don't know, we must have thrown like a pitchy log in there or something, because the bottom of a half-gallon jar of electuary broke out on top of the very, very hot wood stove. So to put that in perspective, sugar of any kind, no matter what it's made out of, when it burns, really, really stinks and smokes. And we were in a tiny 800 square foot cabin on the mountain, and it was like negative fucking 10 outside. And so the house just billowed, and then like you have to let the wood stove cool down, and like it was black burnt on tar over the whole top of this thing, and we ended up having to like strip the entire wood stove, and it was just, it was a cold couple of days. And yeah, so don't put it on your wood stove in any way, shape, or form. I had done that successfully a bunch of times before. It could have been the jar had a defect in it or something, but it challenged my vocabulary and the cuss words I got out. So anyhow, if you like hearing me ramble, if you like watching these super simple videos, and you like hearing that you are smart enough, because you are, to do these things, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications by clicking the little bell icon down below. That helps you know when I post. It helps you not miss out, because I don't really post these videos on like a scheduled basis. I do batches of them as I'm out and about making medicines, meeting plant allies, and then I just upload them all at once. So it can be easy to forget that this channel exists. And then make sure to like and comment. That way I know you're here with me. I know I'm not alone, but also I'm not gonna lie, it helps other people find me. It helps bump me up in the almighty algorithm. You know, where YouTube decides like if our videos are worth showing to other people. But I also like to really interact, and if you ever have a question that I've missed, if I like didn't say something or you need clarification, I am pretty responsive. And I like interaction, I really do. And speaking of interaction, come find me on Instagram, come find my website. I give out so much free content. I really push myself to give more than I get. And you can check that stuff out by following the links in my bio here. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time, okay? Bye.